هر جایی خدا همینجا بخیر
اونجا بریه.
خب هر جایی که می‌خوای.
اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. الحمد لله رب العالمین، بارئ الخلائق اجمعین، باعث الانبیاء والمرسلین، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سیدنا و حبیب قلوبنا و طبیب نفوسنا و شفیع ذنوبنا ابی القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وعلى أصحابه المنتجبين. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في قرآنه الكريم وقوله الحق وهو أصدق الصادقين. اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. وواعدنا موسى 30 ليلة وأتممناها ب10 فتم ميقات ربه 40 ليلة. وقال موسى لأخيه هارون اخلفني في قومي وأصلح ولا تتبع سبيل المفسدين. صدق الله العلی العظیم و صدق رسوله النبی الامین الکریم. برادران و خواهران عزیز و نهایت گرامیم، سلام علیکم جمیعا و رحمت الله و برکاته. ایام 40 سالار شهیدان حضرت ابا عبدالله الحسین علیه السلام را خدمت همه عاشقان و دلدادگان و رهروان راه ابا عبدالله الحسین تسلیت و تعزیت عرض می کنم. خدای مهربان را سپاسگزار هستیم که توفیق داد تا در خانه خودش دور هم جمع شویم برای یک امر مقدس، برای یک دلیل زیبا و اون توجه به خدا و توسل به ولی خداست که عبارت باشد از ابا عبدالله الحسین علیه السلام. من با اجازه همه بزرگترهای مجلس، عزیزان و سروران ارجمندم، موسفیدان، بالاخص سلسله جلیله روحانیت، سرور عزیزم حاج آقای کشمیری، برادر نهایت گرامیم جناب آقای شیخ جعفر، دقایق بسیار مختصر را در خدمتتون خواهم بود. این جلسه به مناسبت 40 سالار شهیدان ابا عبدالله الحسین علیه السلام برگزار شده است. 40 در زبان عربی همون 40 است که من و شما در زبان فارسی میگوییم. بنیانگذار 40 صحابی جلیل القدر پیامبر عظیم الشأن اسلام، یعنی جابر بن عبدالله انصاری است. جابر فرد بسیار مشهور و انسان بسیار توانمندی است. من این مقدمه را عرض کنم که چرا اربعین رو در بین یک گده از مسلمان ها بسیار جدی میگیرن و جایگاه اربعین چیه و حکایت و قصه اربعین چیست، از کجا آغاز شده است. بنیانگذار اصلی اربعین جناب جابر ابن عبدالله انصاری است. جابر فرزند شهیده. جابر کسیه که محضر پیامبر را درک کرده است. جابر در زمان خودش کرسی درس داشته، آدم مدرس بوده است، آدم مجاهد بوده است. علاوه بر این که عبدالله ابن عمرو پدر جابر از بزرگان صحابی پیامبر اسلام هست. در غزوه احد در محضر پیامبر عزیز اسلام جام شهادت را نوشیده است، پدر جابر. و جابر فرزند شهید هست. در قدم اول پدرش جان خودش را فدای پیغمبرش کرده است، هستی خودش را فدای پیغمبرش کرده است. پدر جابر، خود جابر 19 بار در غزوات شرکت کرده است. 19 بار در جنگی که پیغمبر بوده است جابر حضور داره. جابر ابن عبدالله انصاری. روایت را شیخ طوسی نقل می کند. سال 61 هجری، زمانی که جابر به سن کهولت رسیده، ناتوان است، پیره، اونقدر ضعیف شده که بیناییش را از دست داده، نابینا شده. چشمش کور است، نمی بیند. چشم بصر البته کوره. این چشم ظاهر که من و شما میگیم چشم، بینایی خودش را از دست داده. وقت خبر شهادت ابا عبدالله الحسین علیه السلام به مدینه رسید، جابر همراه عطیه هم شخص بسیار مهمی هست. این کلمات، این چیزایی که میگن دقت کنید که ما بفهمیم چرا اربعین مهمه. آیا دلیل هم داریم یا نه؟ عطیه همراه جابر در یک مسیر هست از مدینه به کربلا. چون جابر نابینا هست، عطیه او را همراهی می کند. عطیه انسان توانمندی است. البته عطیه خودش صحابی نیست، از تابعین هست. حالا فرق صحابی و تابعین رو کی میتونه بدونه؟ یک سوال اگر جایزه بگیم امشب هست، بفرمایید.
صحابی کسانی هستند که پیامبر صلی الله علیه و دیدن و صحبت کردند.
صحابی کسی که پیغمبر خدا را دیده و درک کرده.
تابعین کسانی هستند که خود پیامبر صلی الله علیه و ندیدند و صحبت نبودند، اما با یارانش
با صحابی پیغمبر دیدن کرده. ماشاءالله. برای سلامتی آقا سعید هم صلوات بگین. پس صحابی کسیه که حضور پیغمبر را درک کرده است و تابعین و کساییه که خود پیغمبر عزیز خدا را ندیده است اما صحابی پیغمبر را دیده است. پس عطیه که همراه جابر از مدینه حرکت میکنه به طرف کربلا صحابی نیست، اما از تابعین هست. عطیه هم انسان بسیار وارسته است، انسان بسیار داناست، انسان فقیه، مفسر قرآن هست. عرضم به خدمت شما، از اینجا حرکت میکنه، از مدینه روز 40 بعد از شهادت سید و سالار شهیدان در کربلا میرسد. زمانی که خبر شهادت امام حسین علیه السلام به مدینه رسیده است و اینها حرکت کرده به طرف کربلا از مدینه، 40 روز بعد از شهادت امام حسین، جابر ابن عبدالله انصاری همراه عطیه و همراه خودش به کربلای معلا رسیده است که روز 40 بوده. و روایتی که نقل می شود، 2 زیارت داریم در مورد اربعین. یک زیارت از همین جابر ابن عبدالله انصاری است که جابر انشا کرده است و خونده است و این عطیه که مفسر قرآن هست، آدم فقیه است، آدم توانمند است، آدم بسیار متقی و دیندار است و این ضبط کرده است و نوشته کرده است. یک زیارت اربعین از جابر ابن عبدالله انصاری نقل شده است که خب معصوم نیست، و یک زیارت اربعین هم از آقا امام صادق علیه السلام نقل شده که اونم راویش بسیار موثقه که معصوره و به عقیده ما امام معصومه و حرفی که میزنه حرفش متصل به وحی هست و حرفش سند و ثقیت داره. و زیارتی که ما در اربعین میخوانیم و بسیار مهم هست، از امام صادق علیه السلام شخص به نام صفان روایت کرده است. اینم دلیل اربعین که بسیار مهم بود که ما بدانیم چرا دوره هم جمع میشیم. حالا من نکته را، چون وقت کم هست، نکته را خدمت عزیزان عرض میکنیم که به درد همه بخوره امشب. عرضم به خدمت شما که خود کلمه اربعین، امشب من میخوام این کلمه قرآنی رو خدمت عزیزان به عرض برسانم. اربعین یعنی چی؟ اربعین، ببینید من اول با مثال شروع بکنم. بعض مسائل هست، بعض چیزها هست که برای من و شما تقدس داره، ارزش داره. ما یک تقید و تعهد نسبت به بعضی مسائل داریم. فکر میکنیم برای ما قداست داره، برای ما عظمت داره. مسجد مثلا مکانیه که برای همه قداست داره، علل خصوص مسجدی که مثل این مسجد زیبا باشه. من خودم هر از چندگاهی که اینجا توفیق پیدا میکنم میایم، دلم میخواد که نماز بخونم. همیشه هر وقتی آمدم بیشتر احساس پیدا میکنم که نماز بخونم. و این حسن مساجد است که وقتی شما وارد مسجد میشوید دلتون باز بشه و احساس عبادت پیدا بکنید. یک چیز خوبی که من در بین برادران عزیز اهل سنت دیدن در مساجدشون که میروم، هر انسانی که وارد مسجد میشود مشغول عبادت میره. یک جایی میشینه مشغول میشه، یا قرآن میخونه یا ذکر میگه، و این چیز بسیار خوبیه و این باید برای ما یک درسی باشه، برای اونهایی که وقتی که وارد مسجد میشود فکر میکنن که بریم دوست و رفیق و آشنا و سخن و بگو و مگو امثال اینها. مسجد جای عبادت خداست، جای راز و نیاز با خدا هست. مثلا مسجد تقدس داره، تقدسش از کجاست؟ واضح این قداست کیه؟ واضح این قداست خدا هست یا بشر؟ بعضی مقدس ها واضحش خدا هست، بعضی مقدست ها، بعضی قوانین، بعضی مبانی واضحش بشر هست. مثلا شما که رانندگی میکنید در داخل شهر، سر چهارراه چراغ قرمز هست، به احترام قانون وای میسته اینجا. واضح این قانون کیه؟ خداست یا بشر؟ بشر هست. اما احترام به قانون، خب این عقل جمعی انسان ها، ما به عنوان اعضای جامعه، عقل جمعی ما خرد حکم میکند که بالاخره قوانین باشه و این قانون را همه باید رعایت بکنه و احترام بگذاره. بعضی اوقات هست که واضح قانون، واضح یک امر بشر هست. بعضی وقتها هست که واضح خدای حق است، خدای تعالی هست. در قصه اربعین دوستان، برادران و خواهران عزیز، در قصه اربعین ببینید اینجا کلمه اربعین هدف هم هست. در قصه اربعین یا کلمه اربعین یا کلمه 40 واضح اینجا خدای احد و واحد هست، واضح خدا هست. نمیدونم شما شاید شنیده باشین، یک شخصی است در تاریخ به نام فیثاغورس، یک انسان مشهوری هست، انسان ریاضیدان بوده و بعد از این یک گروهی آمده است به نام فیثاغوریان که اینها مبنای حقیقت را عدد می‌دانستند. برای هر شیء یک متمثل عدد در نظر می‌گرفتند. اینها معتقد بودن که اگر میخوای حقیقت یک شی را در بیاری باید اون عدد را بفهمی. اگر به حقیقت و کنه یک امری میخوای پی ببری باید اون عدد را بفهمی. به عدد اینها به شدت توجه خاص داشتن، مثلا عدد 4 یا مثلا عدد 10 یا مثلا بعضی از بزرگان که در تاریخ بشر اثرگذار بودن، مثلا همین نیکولا تسلا که دانشمند معروفیه که من فکر کنم بعضیا نوشته میکنن که این بنده خدا ایده برق از این بود، بعد اون ادیسون آمد از این گرفت. خب بالاخره حرفایی هست در تاریخ. این میگفت که به عدد 3 و 6 و 9 بسیار احترام شدید قائل بود. بعضی واضع قداست اعداد مانند اینها بشر هست، اما بعضی اوقات واضع این قداست خدای احد و واحد هست. در قصه اربعین عزیزان واضع خدا هست. شما را ببرم در آیه شریفه 142 سوره مبارکه اعراف، در اونجا که خدا میفرماید و اذ واعدنا موسی 40 لیلة ثم اتخذتم العجل من بعده وانتم ظالمون. و اذ واعدنا موسی 40 لیله و اذ واعدنا موسی 40 لیله. یک دقتی کوچیک بکنید شاید یک چیز یاد بگیرید میشه. و اذ واعدنا موسی 40 میگه بیاد آور، خدا و پیغمبرش میگوید زمان میعاد موسی را که با ما داشت. من اینجا کلمه 40 را کال ندارم، به کلمه اذ واعدنا از وعده می آید، از میعاد، از عهد دیدار، از اون پیمان دیدار. حرف اینجاست روی کلمه واعدنا هست. اعداد آقایان، اعداد همه اعتباری هستند. مثلا اگر 2 شده برای اینکه 2 تا 1 شده 2 تا، اگر 4 شده از 4 تا 1 شده از 4. در اینجا خدا میگوید و اذ واعدنا موسی 40 لیله. اینجا توجهمان روی واعدنا باشه، اینجا روی کلمه عهد است که موسی با خدا دارد. میگوید این عهدی که موسی با خدا دارد، این عهد کی به کمال میرسد؟ زمانی که موسی در این عهد بیاید در محضر خدا، 40 شبانه روز در محضر خدا بماند تا موسی شود، تا این قلب موسی آماده پذیرش اون چیزهایی که بشود که خداوند بعد از 40 روز به حضرت موسی سلام الله علیه عطا می کند. و اذ واعدنا موسی 40 لیله. شبم میگوید. ببینید نکته ها دارد اینجا. 40 عزیزان شما شاید شنیده باشین، در احادیث داریم من اخلص لله 40 صباحا یا 40 لیلا یا 40 یوما. من اخلص لله 40 صباحا. هر کس 40 شبانه روز این قلب خودش را، این پنجره دل خودش را به سوی خدا باز بکند. این 40 عدد رمز هست. عدد کلید واژه ها را دقت بکنیم، کلید واژه ها را. 40 عدد رمز هست. میگوید کسی که 40 شبانه روز دریچه قلب خودش را به سوی خدا باز بکند، جرت ینابیع الحکمت من القلبه الی لسانه. هر کس 40 شبانه روز دریچه دل و جانش را به سوی خدا باز بکند، خداوند چشمه های حکمت را از قلب او به زبانش جاری می کند. میگوید حکمت، خدای مهربان در قرآن کریمش میفرماید و من اوتی الحکمت فقد اوتی خیرا کثیرا. هر که را خداوند حکمت بدهد خیر کثیر به او انسان عنایت کرده است. حکمت نعمت بسیار بالایی هست. اینجا هدف پاکسازی است، اینجا هدف آماده سازی است، اینجا هدف تکامل و بلوغ است. اگر میخواهیم رشد بکنیم، اگر میخواهیم ترقی بکنیم، اگر میخواهیم به جایی برسیم، عدد 40 یادمون باشد. اگر ما نماز میخوانیم در طول شبانه روز، نماز برای مراقبه هست. نماز برای این نیست که من نماز خوانده باشم. نماز برای اینه که من را نگه داره. اگر من در این 40 نبودم، دستم را بگیرن این یک 40 را پله به پله تا شب 40 برسانم. در ادامه آیه جالبه، بعد خدا میگوید که اینجا که خدا به موسی میگوید ما 40 شبانه روز با تو وعده داشتیم، این وعده به جای رسید. در ادامهش میگوید که اونجا بود که خدا به موسی این لیاقت را داده است و این عظمت را داد که موسی آمد شروع کرد گفتگو کردن با خدا را. لیاقت کلم موسی تکلیما، موسی کلیم الله شدن را پیدا میکنه. کی این عظمت را پیدا کرده است؟ بعد از این که این 40 تمام شد، بعد از این که 40 شبانه روز با خدای خودش راز و نیاز کرده است حضرت موسی. این 40 شبانه روز را قلب و دل و جان و روحش را جناب موسی آماده کرده است. بعد موسی تقاضا میکند که خدایا من را خودت را به من نشان بده، خودت را به من نشان بده. بعد از این 40 شبانه روزه. در آیه دیگری هست، در آیه دیگری من 4 مرتبه این کلمه اربعین آمده. من چون وقت کم هست خیلی میترسم که به اون همه مطالب نرسم. کلمه آیه دیگر رو خدمت شما بخونیم. وصینا الانسان بوالدیه حسنا. میگوید اینجام جالبه، خیلی دقت کنید. آیات قرآن کریم میگه، خدا میگوید ما به انسان وصیت کردیم که به پدر و مادرتون احسان کنین. در هیچ جا نگفته است آقایان خواهران، در هیچ جا نگفته است جانتون را زیر قدمه های پدر و مادر پهن کنید. اگر در قرآن کریم در مورد پدر و مادر گفته، در مورد پدر و مادر جانتون را پهن بکنید که پدر و مادر از رویتون رد بشه. اینجا میگوید وصینا الانسان بوالدیه احسان. خدا میگوید به پدر و مادرت محسن باش، حواست به پدر و مادرت باشه. حملته امه کرها، یادت باشه که مادر خیلی زحمت کشید برایت. و ودعته کرها، یکی از شدیدترین و سختترین درد انسان و بشریت درد زایمانه. یادت باشه که مادر برای تو سختی ها کشید. بعد میگوید که و حمله و فصاله 30 شهرا، 3 سال طول کشید این حمل و این فصال طول کشید. حتی اذا بلغ اشده و بلغ 40 سنه، زمانی که تو بزرگ شدی. کی بزرگ میشی؟ و بلغ 40 سنه، زمانی که به سن 40 سالگی رسیدی. بلوغ انسان 40 سالگی است. من در مورد 40 خیلی حرفها دارم اما وقت کم، متاسفانه بیشتر از این نمیتونم برم. چه ربطی داشت به این 40؟ میخوام بگم که 40 کمال عاشوراست. میخوام عرض بکنم که 40 کمال شهادت ابا عبدالله الحسین هست. اگر 40 است که این شهادت را تکمیل میکند، 40 است که این عشق و محبت را، این حرارت را در قلب انسانهای عاشق حسین تزریق میکند. عجیب است که شما در کربلای معلا وقتی میبینید که انسانهای زیادی از سرتاسر عالم میاد. اصلا 40 فراتر از یک قوم رفته است، فراتر از یک مذهب و دین رفته است. 40 متعلق به همه انسانهای آزاده امروز هست. شما اگر در کربلا بروید اونجا مسیحی میبینید، اونجا سنی، شیعه، یهودی، هر انسان را در کربلا میبینید. حدود بعضی وقتا پارسال بود نمیدونم کی بود گزارش دادن 20 میلیون جمعیت از سرتاسر دنیا در کربلای معلا جمع شده بود. 20 میلیون جمعیت بدون کدام مشکله، بدون کدام گرفتاری، با همه خطرها و تهدیداتی که وجود دارد. این 40 چقدر زیبا بود. شما وقت در 40 می اونجا کمال زیبایی هست. لذاست که 40 همون گونه که کمال بلوغ انسان هست، کمال رشد انسان هست. 40 خواهران و برادران کمال و بلوغ عاشورا هم میتواند باشد. صلی الله علیک یا ابا عبدالله، صلی الله علیک و علی اهل بیتک و علی اصحابک و علی ذریتک و علی 9 المعصومین من ذریتک جمیعا و رحمت الله و برکاته. من دیگه بیشتر از این وقت رو نگیرم، چون وقتی برادر عزیز جناب آقای دکتر فیاض چیز نشود، تلف نشود، ببخشید اگر بیشتر صحبت کردم. گرچه که عرایزم خیلی ناقص من، ان شاء الله خداوند توفیق بدهد که بتوانیم از این جلسات معنوی، اینها سفره معنوی و رزق معنوی هست که ان شاء الله بتوانیم بهره ببریم از عزیزان و بزرگانی که اینجا تشریف میبرد. من از محضر همه عزیزان و بزرگان عذرخواهی میکنم اگر پرحرفی شد، برای سلامتی خودتان و اینکه خدای مهربان دل و جانمان را منور بگرداند و بتوانیم بیاموزیم از این جلسات. و تشکر میکنم از همه عزیزانی که بانی چون این جلساتی هست، بالاخص برادر عزیز و گرامی و جناب انجینر صاحب حاجی محمد رضای افشار که زحمات میکشند برای سلامتی همه خدمتگزاران دین و قرآن و ایمان. بر محمد و اهل بیت محمد صلوات.
از جناب محترم سید هادی هاشمی سپاسگزارم. خداوند ایشان را در پناه ایمنیش داشته باشد. صلوات دیگر را بلندتر عنایت بفرمایید. در این قسمت از خواهر عزیزم الهام جان دعوت می کنم تا برنامه امشب را اینا پیش ببرن و ازشان دعوت می کنم تا تشریف بیارن. صلوات عنایت بفرمایید.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My dear sisters and brothers, Sheikh and Sayyid, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight, we are here to commemorate the Arbaeen of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, which will be in about a week. As we speak, many are on their flights to Najaf, and unfortunately, we are not with them. Alhamdulillah, though, we have a beautiful community and center here, and we are able to commemorate together. Let's make it our goal tonight to understand the universality of Karbala and Ashura. My name is Ilham Jawadi, and I'm a member of the Crescent Islamic Center Youth Group. I'm honored to introduce our English speaker for tonight. Dr. Sheikh Fayaz Jaffer is the research scholar for the Islamic Center at New York University and associate chaplain for the Center of Global and Spiritual Life at NYU. He also serves as an adjunct assistant professor at NYU, where he teaches Islamic law and Islamic spirituality. In addition to his roles at NYU, he also serves on the religious affairs team at Imam Mehdi Association of Marja'iyah. Dr. Sheikh Jaffer received his Islamic education in the seminary of Karbala, Iraq. He also holds a doctorate in education from New York University, with a focus on the identity development of Shia youth in the United States. Dr. Sheikh Jaffer has lectured at institutions across the United States, Canada, Europe, East Africa, and the Middle East. Due to the political and social climate, he has been making strides in New York by taking part in interfaith discussions with the goal of increasing dialogue with faith leaders. In 2019, he co-founded Pillars of Peace, a nonprofit established in order to address a gap in appropriate services for survivors of domestic and gender-based violence from all backgrounds, especially within the Muslim community. He received his Islamic education at the Seminary of Karbala. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Sheikh Fayaz Jaffer with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
so much. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وهادينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع نفوسنا، حبيب إله العالمين ولا حبيب إلا هو وأهله، الذي سمع في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المذلومين. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق هو الأصدق القائلين: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ومن آياته أن خلقكم من تراب ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Before I begin with the focal point of my remarks this evening, I wanted to share with you one really important line of a conversation that takes place soon after the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Ashura. It is stated that several days after the epic martyrdom of the king of martyrs, Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, it is stated that the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad, they rounded up the family of the Messenger of God. And before departing from the city of Karbala toward the city of Kufa, where they were taken in the presence of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, as the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad rounds together the women and the children of the greatest of God's creations, he decides to put them through one more obstacle and one more trial. And that was to taking them through the battlefield on the plains of Karbala, so their eyes could for one final time be witness to the decapitated and dismembered and bruised and bloodied bodies of their loved ones. And for the first time in broad daylight, Zainab alayhi salam, Ali Zain al-Abidin, these women and these children, they were witness to the body of their father, the grandson of the Messenger of God, Sayyid Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. And it is stated that when Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, he saw the body of his father in the way that it was, dismembered, decapitated, the chest that had been placed under the hooves of the horses on the 10th of Muharram, that Lady Zainab alayhi salam sees some stress and some anxiety in his face. And in order to offer him some console, she uttered these lines which are etched in history. She states, peace and blessings be upon her, وَيَنْسِبُونَ لِهَذَا الطَّفْ أَلَمًا لَقَبْرَ أَبِيكَ سَيِّدِ الشُّهَدَاءِ لَا يَدْرُسُ أَثَرُهُ وَلَا يَعْفُو رَسْمُهُ عَلَى كُرُورِ اللَّيَالِي وَالْأَيَّامِ. She states, O son of my brother, know that many long generations after this one, there are going to be made many attempts toward wiping away the memory of your father, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. But in spite of that, this location and this place and this city and this spot that your eyes are witness to at this moment will undoubtedly be a light, will be a beacon, will be an opportunity for the remembrance of this epic tragedy. And then she continues and she states, وَلَا يَجْتَهِدَنَّ أَئِمَّةِ الْكُفْرِ وَأَشْيَاءُ الضَّلَالَ فِي مَحْوِهِ وَتَعْمِيسِهِ فَلَا يَزْدَادُ آثَرُهُ إِلَّا ظُهُورًا وَأَمْرُهُ إِلَّا عُلُوًّا. An attempt after attempt will be made toward completely eradicating, thank you so much, to completely eradicating the remembrance of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. But in spite of all of that, the only thing that will take place is that his legacy and his teaching and the values that he stood for will only be further illuminated and further magnified. I say this as an introduction, my friends, for us to keep in mind that on that day, in that situation, Lady Zainab alayhi salam, she offered words of consolation toward her nephew and toward her imam, and said that numerous attempts are going to be made to completely eradicate this message of your father, but nonetheless, generation after generation, community after community, decade after decade, century after century, the only thing that will get greater is this location of Karbala and this lesson that we derive from him, salamullah alayhi. My friends, in these words of Zainab alayhi salam, as beautiful as they are, and as eloquent as they are, and as meaningful as they are, also allow for us to reflect upon how we can take part in terms of illuminating the responsibility that we have toward being that mechanism that magnifies and that illuminates the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam to all of the worlds. But like we know, for many of us within our communities, we have seen the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and that of his grandfather Rasulullah and that of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt in their entirety, and we've kept it really close to ourselves, and we've failed to share that with the world around us. Back in New York a few years ago, I had this friend of mine that I had developed over the last several years who was new to the religion of Islam. And after many years of getting an opportunity to know him, one day I had dinner with him and I said, "Hey, let me ask you a question." I said, "What was it that brought you toward this light of Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them?" So he says, "Look," he says, "I like you and you're a nice guy, and I think that I'm a nice guy." He says, "But let me say this, that I fell in love with the Prophet's family because of people unlike yourself." I said, "What did I do?" He says, "When I first converted to the religion of Islam, I had no idea what sect and denomination that I needed to sign up for." He said, "I became Muslim and everyone that I went to told me you have to make a wudu like this way, and you have to pray this way, and you have to perform this ritual this way, and so on and so forth." So he said that I went to one masjid and I went to another masjid. I went to a Sunni masjid, I went to a Shia masjid, I went to a Hanafi masjid, I went to a Maliki masjid, I went to a community that was predominantly Pakistani, I went to a community that was predominantly African American, I went to a community that was predominantly Arab, so on and so forth, in order that I can experience what Islam is like in this country. And he says, and then I went into a mosque where people claimed, these are his words, where people claimed to love the Prophet's family. The minute that I walked in, everyone looked at me. And they looked at me weird. And I told them that I'm new. And they said, "That's great." He said, "I sat alone when I ate. No one welcomed me. No one spoke to me. I was lonely. And I realized that this is the community that I absolutely don't want to be a part of. So I left, never to come back for years." He says, I fast forward a couple of years later, and I see online and I get exposed toward this tradition of Ahlul Bayt. So he said, I went to my local mosque and I asked some of my teachers, I told them, how come we never talk about Hassan and Hussein? How come we never talk about Ali and Fatima? And they said, well, that's something reserved for those other guys across the street. And he said, because they kept on rejecting my advances toward learning about the Prophet's family, it made me that much more curious. And he said, so I went on my own, and I bought books, and I went to libraries, and I searched online. And I made a commitment that I was never going to go back to that mosque until, for whatever reason, the love of these personalities that I had propelled me back into the same place that I absolutely despised and hated on day one. So he said that I came toward loving these personalities because God brought me there. He brought me to the love of Muhammad and Ali and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein, peace and blessings be upon them, but not people like you. For people like you, you take your imams, these are his words, you take your imams and you hold them hostage, and you think that they're only for you and not for us. I say all of this, my friends, in order to remind ourselves that we come on days and nights like these during the months of Muharram and Safar consistently to attend majalis, to attend gatherings in remembrance of Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them. Zainab alayhi salam, she makes a commitment to Ali Zain al-Abidin, and she says, "O son of my brother, know that this message of Hussein is only going to get further magnified." We have to be that mechanism to magnify it. We have to be that mechanism to allow for that light to continue to illuminate. Because if we're not that vessel and we're not that voice, then who exactly is Zainab alayhi salam speaking about? So for today's discussion, really briefly, and I don't want to take so much of your time, I want to reflect upon how we can globalize this message of Karbala and of Ashura and of Al-Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, peace and blessings be upon him, in 3 dimensions. The first dimension is in terms of understanding what does it mean toward globalize. The second dimension in terms of us having an understanding and a background of the history of gatherings like these ones. And thirdly, some practical things that we can do towards supporting the voice of Zainab alayhi salatu wassalam. So let's jump right into dimension number 1 of our conversation, again very briefly. Amongst the most popular words over the last 15 or 20 years that is oft studied in academic institutions and universities across this country and all across this world is a term known as globalization. Globalization is often understood as the fact that the world is becoming a smaller place due to an increase in technology and the ability for us to see and interact with people all across the world at any given moment or at any given time. 50 years ago, if someone had said that you can communicate with someone in the opposite side of the world just by your mobile device, the first question you would have asked is, what exactly is a mobile device? And what are you talking about? How can I talk to someone in real time on the opposite side of the world? It's impossible. But like we know, with advances in technology, we have that capacity to undoubtedly do so. And with these advances in technology and the fact that this world is this global village and the fact that this world is truly becoming a smaller place via means of this technology, that undoubtedly impacts our religious communities in a wide manifestation of different ways. Amongst the positives is the fact that if you can't attend the majlis, we can live stream the majlis. The fact that we can connect with people and we can learn and we can increase our knowledge and education by, again, literally benefiting from people in real time at any part in this world. That with these positives and these advances in technology, we can increase mechanisms toward combating global poverty. How many of you have ever heard of the term crowdfunding? You put on one link and everyone within the world can donate toward one particular cause. Doesn't matter if you live in New York City or in Washington, D.C., or in Kabul, or in Baghdad, or in Mombasa, Kenya. Doesn't make a difference. Everyone can support a particular cause via one link that is sent out on a WhatsApp chat. Globalization has a whole host of benefits, but with these benefits also again come a whole host of cons and negatives as well. Because of an increase in globalization and the capacity that we have toward increasing our knowledge and our interactions with people everywhere, we find a decrease in the attendance of our mosques and our Islamic centers. Someone says, why do I need to show up when I could wear my pajamas and turn it on TV? Or I could watch it from my phone? Or I could turn on my laptop? Why would I want to get out of my house and see people, and the program runs too late, and it's too hot, or it's too cold, or I don't want to see this person, or so on and so forth? In addition to the cons that have increased due to the globalization or the globalized world that we are living in, is that anyone and everyone pretends to be an expert on anything and everything. Everyone reads one article, they hear one podcast, they read the back of one book, they hear one excerpt, and they think that, for instance, that they have the ability and the authority to speak on just about anything and everything. So this has decreased the amount of humility that we have in our communities, in the world that we live in, and has increased the arrogance amongst people. And here, I want to just highlight amongst the most important realities and outcomes of globalization, specifically in terms of how it impacts our community, and specifically how it impacts the story and the epic martyrdom of Al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam. Hear me out. If anyone amongst you, right now, at this very moment, or when you go home, you go on Google and you type in Shia, you type in Hussein, you type in Karbala, every one of us know exactly the images that are going to be put on display the minute that we make that quick Google search. It doesn't take 5 minutes for someone on these days of Muharram and Ashura to come to one of our gatherings and oftentimes be immediately turned away due to many of the rituals that we engage in because of their ignorance or because of their lack of knowledge of what it is that we are engaged in or what it is that we're doing. And let me just open up one quick parenthesis out of love. I believe that undoubtedly when someone commits to any one of these rituals, they're doing it out of love. And they're doing it out of their sincerity, out of their adoration, out of their veneration for the Prophet and his family, peace and blessings be upon them. But that does not dismiss the fact that this world that we live in is this world that is undoubtedly getting smaller. We are living in this globalized world where our actions, our behaviors, our rituals, our words, our communications, our engagement is literally live at this very second to whoever wants to turn it on at this moment. And that means that with this power that we have been gifted and that we have been given, we have an incredibly important responsibility toward acting in accordance with the way that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt want us to, and as the words of Zainab alayhi salam validate for us, that the message of Al-Husayn alayhi salam is only going to be further magnified and further illuminated. We have that responsibility to magnify it and to illuminate it and to connote it in every single positive means that we have the potential and capacity to do so. And that brings me then toward dimension number 2 of our discussion. The globalized world, my friends, undoubtedly places an incredibly important and significant role in terms of our majalis and in terms of our gatherings in remembrance and in recollection of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn, salamullah alayh. Like I said before, it doesn't take a lot of effort toward understanding or toward seeing just the impact of what it is that we do and what it is that we engage in the midst of our communities. Historically, like we know, many of these rituals that we have engaged in, they have become an incredibly important and salient manifestation of our religious identity. Someone knows the Shia by their visitation to Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. But we have to understand that so much of our rhetoric consistently, year after year, day after day, may often cause a detriment internally within our own four walls as well. Let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, I completed my doctoral research at New York University, where I spent time studying young people within our communities. My dissertation was literally focusing on the identity development and the experience of Shia Muslim youth in the United States. And I would sit with young people all across the country, And I still do till this very day, in my visitation and even in my work. And I tell them to tell me about their experiences, how they understand religion, how do you see and how do you observe your faith. And from data that I collected personally, and I'm not in any way saying that this speaks for every one of our communities, but in the data that I personally collected, that 30% of those who I spent time with and that I interviewed and that I observed stated that they are observant when it comes toward their prayers, when it comes toward their recitation of Quran, when it comes toward fasting, when it comes toward observing the rituals in accordance with that which is obligatory in our divine law. Well, everyone that I spoke to claimed or stated that they were observant and religious, and when I asked them to define how they defined religious, they would say that religious for us is in ziyarat Arbaeen and in coming to the Majlis of Al-Hussein alayhi salam. And I would sit with them for hours and I would tell them, tell me more. And I would sit with them for hours and I would see that none of them would say the word God or Allah or Quran or Salat or Masjid or Ramadan or fasting. 70%. Their understanding of religion, their understanding of faith, their understanding of spirituality boiled down to two things: out of my love and out of my affection and out of my sincerity for this community that I care everything about. The two definitions of faith for them: Ziyarat al-Arbaeen and Majlis for Hussein alayhi salam. Someone might say, that's awesome. At least they have that. I say, no. Out of my love, we have far more potential for these young people than the only thing that we serve them is these. My friends, I'm not dismissing these important rituals. What I'm trying to say is that let these rituals be a means and a mechanism for transformation. Ritual needs to allow for us to transform into spiritual. It needs to allow for us to grow and to be amongst those who truly illuminate the qualities and the characteristics and the values that we have been taught by the Ahlul Bayt, by Al-Hussein, by the day of Ashura, everything that we learn in that city of Karbala. And that brings me then toward this third dimension of our discussion. What are some things that we can do practically as individuals and as communities in order to uplift what it is that we have in terms of this incredible legacy of Imam al-Hussein, of Karbala, of Ashura? My friends, more than anything else, what we learn from Imam al-Hussein on the 10th of Muharram is we learn beauty in all of its various manifestations. From Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, we learn what it means to love. We learn what it means to sacrifice. We learn generosity. We learn altruism. We learn beauty. We learn prayers. We learn all of the most sublime and perfect and metaphysical qualities that the human being desires, and everyone is naturally pulled toward. And that requires us then to making sure that our gatherings, in their honor, peace and blessings be upon them, also illuminate these qualities and these gatherings as well. Like I said before, rituals are good as long as the ritual serves the ultimate end. Let me give you some examples. Within Islamic tradition, we know that so much of what it is that we are engaged in are ritual after ritual. Prayers is a ritual that we perform 5 times throughout the day. Fasting is a ritual that we perform during the holy month of Ramadan. Hajj is a ritual filled with a multitude of other rituals. If you've been for Hajj, you know that there are so many rituals that we perform in the midst of the Hajj in and of itself. There is the ihram and all of the various components to it. There is the tawaf around the holy Kaaba. There is the salat of the tawaf. There is the sa'i between Safa and Marwa. So on and so forth. In the prayers, it itself consists of various rituals. It consists of standing, and it consists of bowing, and it consists of prostration, and it consists of tashahhud and of salam. Fasting during the holy month of Ramadan have all of these bounds. All of these rituals, at the end of the day, if we perform them in accordance with the way that the Prophet and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt have taught us, undoubtedly we will take some benefit from them. But ultimately, there's an end goal toward the prayers. إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ. That the ultimate goal of the prayer is that it creates a prohibitive force between us and sin and transgression. If I perform all of the prayers in accordance with Islamic law, I stand and I bow and I prostrate and I perform tashahhud and I perform salam, and if my mind is nowhere near where it needs to be in the course of my prayers, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still accept the prayer. But the prayer has more potential if our minds are fixated and we are able to fulfill the ultimate objective, which is to create this prohibitive force between me and sin. Following so far? Fasting in and of itself. If I abstain from food and drink for 30, 29, however many days during the holy month of Ramadan, and I perform all of the rituals, and I do everything that I have to do from a jurisprudential standpoint, but maybe my heart or my mind is not totally fixated on God consciousness, on taqwa, is there potential for my fasting to be accepted? Yes, of course. But my fasting has greater potential than just to fulfill the ritual. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَأَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That the ultimate goal of this fast is that it takes us toward taqwa, God consciousness. Majlis for Hussein, Ziyarat al-Hussein, poetry for Hussein, Ma'tam for Hussein, Masa'ib for Hussein, Tabarruk for Hussein. All of these things, ritualistically, are they good? They're good. Are they beloved? They're beloved. Will they get accepted? They'll get accepted. But at the end of the day, my friends, what I'm trying to say is that we can raise the bar and we can allow for this relationship that we have via ritual toward the tragedy and the epic martyrdom of Al-Hussein alayhi salam can allow for us to be amongst those who raise the bar one higher step in order that it allows for us to become Husseini in its true manifestation and definition. That I become more patient, I become more generous, I become more loving, I become more caring, and so on and so forth. I'll conclude with this narration as taught to us by Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, in which the Imam alayhi salam states, كونوا زينا لنا ولا تكونوا شينا حببونا إلى الناس. The famous hadith that many of us have heard from the Imam salamullah alayhi. He states, be an adornment for us and don't be ashamed for us. And then the Imam alayhi salam, he states, حببونا إلى الناس, that make others love us. ولا تبغضونا جروا إلينا كل مودة. He states, and do not allow for our behavior and our actions and our mannerisms, so on and so forth, to be a mechanism where others despise us. My friends, every single one of us have a responsibility toward upholding these lessons and this character and these mechanisms as taught to us by the family of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon them. It is stated that one day Imam as-Sadiq was in the company of his companion Mufaddal ibn Umar. And he states, Ya Mufaddal, Inna al-Hasan min kulli ahadin Hasan wa minka ahsan bimakanatika minna. He states, O Mufaddal, he states, know that whenever someone does something good, it's good. Whenever someone does a good deed, it's a good deed. But when you do a good deed, it's a really good deed. Why? Because of your relationship with us. I don't know about you all, but whenever I did something remotely bad in the mosque, which was never, because I was always a good boy, my dad would get in the car and we'd be driving back home, and he would say, let me tell you something. Know that everything that you do, someone is looking at me and saying, what a terrible father I am. I said, I didn't do anything. He said, no, you did something. I said, what did I do? He said, you think about it. Why? Because he sees me as an extension of him. Listen to the word of our Imam. He states, O Mufaddal, whenever someone does anything that is good, it's good. But when you do something good, it's really good because of your relationship with us. Your behavior is a reflection on us. وَيَا مُفَضَّلْ إِنَّ الْقَبِيحِ مِنْ كُلِّ أَحَدٍ قَبِيحٍ وَمِنْكَ أَقْبَحْ بِمَكَانَتِكَ مِنَّا. But O Mufaddal, also know that when someone does something wrong, someone does something bad, it's bad. But when you do something bad, it's really bad because of your relationship with us. Know that again, with this gift that we have, this light that we have, this beauty that we have from them, peace and blessings be upon them, Ahlul Bayt, comes an incredibly important responsibility. And if our actions, and if our behaviors, and if our rituals bring a negative light toward Hussein, toward Zainab, toward Rasulullah, toward Ali, toward Fatima, toward Hassan, toward anyone from the progeny of Abu Abdullah, that we are responsible for that image that we are creating in the world that we are living in. But at the same time, if we're bringing that light, and we're bringing that love, and we're bringing that beauty, and we're building the institutions in the streets that need it, and we're serving the homeless in the streets that need it, and we are making a difference in the communities that we're living in, because undoubtedly this community that we live in undoubtedly needs it, and they can benefit from this light and beauty of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, then we are doing them a service, that they look down and they say that these individuals have done a really good service because of their relationship with us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq, and to give us the ability to be amongst those who illuminate the light of Muhammad and wa ali Muhammad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us a life that resembles their life, and a death that resembles their death, and to never separate us from them in this dunya, nor in the barzakh, nor in the akhirah. Barahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin. Wa rahim man qara'a surah al-mubarakat al-Fatiha مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. الفاتحة.
Thank you, Dr. Sheikh Jafar, for your insightful discussion. A specific point you mentioned was, quote, our rituals need to transform into spiritual, and I think that really spoke to me as well as others. Inshallah, we will be able to become more mindful of our ritual acts and transform them one step up and allow us to become better followers of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. I'm pleased to announce that Dr. Sheikh Jafar will also bless us with his knowledge on September 30th at Maghrib time for Mawlud al-Nabi, inshallah. For those who are interested in joining the youth group, you can speak to me or Ustad Nabil. And we also are on WhatsApp. We have an announcement group, and we're also on Instagram as Crescent Islamic Center. Now is the time for dinner. After, in about like 10:30, we will come back up for anyone who's interested with a question and answer session with Dr. Sheikh Jafar. Please recite another loud salawat for Dr. Jafar.